Welcome to the Nerd Party.
I'm Darren Moser.
I'm Philip Gilfus.
I'm Daniel Prue.
And this is City Alpha 3. Hello and welcome to City Alpha 3, a Star Trek podcast here on the Nerd Party Network. I'm Darren Moser, and as always, I am stranded here on City Alpha with my co-host Daniel and Philip.
Really
guys, I'm getting tired of watching Star Trek, guys. It's so much Star Trek. It's all we watch. We need to watch something else.
Well, I mean, there's another franchise that has its own podcast on the network. It's over 50 years old, also a sci-fi property. The accents are a little different, but I'm just saying, it's out there, time and space. Check it out.
Yes. Okay, no, Philip, we pump your show at the end of the show, end of the episode, not the beginning. But no, gentlemen, how has your Trek week been? We haven't had any other shows announced in the last week, so that's a letdown. But any rewatches continuing or?
I have not. I mean, I'm still in my TOS. I haven't watched anything new. I did have, sorry, if I can tangentially say something, speaking of Doctor Who, I did have an interesting experience. There's a third podcast that I occasionally do called, that's sort of based on Doctor Who's Line Is It Anyway, is the name of the podcast. And it's where we will do classic or new Who, except we're all providing the voices, and, the plots are just bizarre. But anyway, I just did a recent recording, and I don't know when it'll air, or, be out there, but we had Sophie Aldred, guest voice, if I can use that word, who played Ace in Doctor Who.
Okay.
And she played
one of the companions.
Yes. So she was on, and she played. We did The Fugitive of the Jadoon, which is from the recent Doctor Who series that introduced a mysterious new Doctor that we never knew anything about. But anyway, that's all to say. She played the mysterious new Doctor. But it was an interesting, fun experience, and also Lisa Greenwood, who does a lot of Doctor Who Big Finish, other voice acting, was there too. So it was nice to.
Because Ace, she was one of the fourth Doctor's companions, right?
Doctor.
Seventh.
Yeah. She was the last.
Is that the question mark one?
Well, they're all question mark ones, but yes, Sylvester McCoy, you would know. He was the seventh Doctor. So she was the last classic companion, if you don't include. But so it was interesting. My little brief experience with Doctor Who celebrity, got to do a voice project.
And Daniel, how is that alphabetized ABC watch through going? Don't think we've forgotten. We're not letting you off the hook.
You may not have forgotten, but I certainly have. I just got I just randomly watch episodes at this point. There's no. I think I've been kind of on a Deep Space Nine season 1 kick, but it's been a little while. But really, the question we all want answered, Darren, is we know you're continuing your Battlestar rewatch.
My first watch. First time through Battlestar. I am 3 episodes into season 4. So I got through the end of season 3.
Did you love the final part of 3, that last 5 minutes?
Oh man, so much happened in that last 5 minutes. I am very. It's interesting because I already feel a bit of a tone difference in 4. I don't know what it is. Whether it's I almost looked at was this run by different people? It's not in a bad way, but just I don't know, something about. Maybe it's the evolution of the show or something like that. It just has a little bit of a different feel, and maybe that's just biased because I've heard that stated into the universe before. But so we got more Cylons, we got all sorts of crazy stuff going on. I'm not quite sure what's going to happen next. There's a lot of Cylons on that ship for it being that Cylon detector really didn't work. Absolute piece of garbage. But I have been enjoying it, and I'm racing to the finish line now.
And just a quick few seconds, and maybe it's just me. I know random, but I assume it was purposeful. But during the latter half of season 3 with Guy Spalter on trial, I assume this is purposeful. But I just thought, considering the time it was made. It's just this perfect picture of framing him, and it's a rough analogy, but framing him as how Saddam Hussein looked during his trial. You have that, grizzled,
disheveled,
and you just that captures that kind of early, or mid 2000s kind of picture.
That's
if you
a good
lived during
point.
that period.
I mean, not that I feel they need to redeem Baltar, because he's a despicable human being, but the fact that, I mean, honestly, the show would be way less interesting if you didn't have that character. Like, having that Judas character throughout the entire
Dr.
series,
Smith.
the Dr. Smith, it's the same thing,
Q.
but they've done, I mean, that's a tightrope to walk, because you can't, I mean, eventually he has to get found out, but then you have to keep him in the show, and have them not just shoot him. So it's, it's really interesting, a really interesting character going on, and him and Six and all of that. I like the twist where Six started to have a vision of Baltar when she woke up from her reincarnation. I'm like, oh my gosh, what is this going on here? So, there's Kara's going off the deep end. Everything's going sideways. So, I'll let you know how much more I get done in the next week. But it's a wild ride. I'm buckled up, ready to jump. But we are not talking about Doctor Who or Battlestar Galactica. We're going to talk about Star Trek, and to do that, through the longest intro ever, we are going to bring in a guest host today, Eric Berry from the Ranger Command Power Hour. Eric, welcome. Thank you for letting us get some of our laundry out of the way in the beginning there.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to be back.
Yeah, so we've had Eric on a couple of times talking about new Star Trek and, just a wonderful point of view, a Trekkie in his own right, also, and, been doing some of his own podcasting with the Escape Podcast. Great title, as always. So I wanted to bring in Eric for today's topic. So with the release of the announcement for the new show, the Pike Show, which actually is known as Strange New Worlds, I wanted to talk about how Star Trek seems to always kind of dip back to that TOS well. And it made me think of another series that seems to do that often, which is Power Rangers, which is another franchise that's been around for 15, 20, 30, 50. Long time.
27 years right now.
Wow.
It feels like more.
Yeah,
but,
it does.
Yeah. But that would mean I'm older, so let's go with 27 years.
I just remember, and I can't remember what grade, because it had to have been like late middle school or goodness forbid, it had to have been middle school. And we would have the TV on in homeroom in the mornings that it was in the classroom, Mr. Winston's class, I remember that. And often it would be ESPN Sports Center, whatever time this was. But for whatever reason, it would also be Power Rangers sometimes. And so that was really almost the only time I ever watched it, was like, because you can never see a full episode, of course, because, school would eventually begin. But anyway, so I always got like a snippet of Power Rangers almost every morning that year.
Nice.
Because it was it 96 that it started in
93.
America? 93. Okay. Yeah.
Same year as Jurassic Park, so.
That's right. So I would have been 10.
They had roughly the same budget too, I think, right?
Right.
Yes, but they spent it all on the Sentai and then the English
spent on the
remaster.
licensing.
Yeah. But Power Rangers is another one where, I mean, every season or two, they reinvent the entire cast and the entire premise. It's the same premise pretty much every single year. Giant monster comes, the monster gets big, make robots come together, robots fight, robots win. I mean, pitch meeting 101, it's very similar. But as far as like the merchandising and the comic books and the toys, it definitely feels like they dip back to that Mighty Morphin, that first season, all the time. Like, if you're going to get a new toy, well, it's got to have the Red Ranger who's a dinosaur in it. Otherwise, kids won't know what it is, even though they were never born when that was originally released. But I thought it'd be interesting to kind of compare the two franchises to see kind of, is Star Trek going in the same route? Or is it a different world now, and it's going to be, a different course I mean, not that we're all marketing executives, but our opinions matter. Dang it, they matter.
Well, I think, at least for Star Trek, it's been a while since they keep going to that well. I mean, it's been, 20 years since Enterprise. Enterprise was a prequel. After Enterprise took that break after its hiatus, the new movie franchise dipped back into the original TOS well.
You're right. It's 09.
09, and then Discovery, and then everything. So, yeah, I mean, Star Trek is no stranger to going back to its roots time and again. And I wonder if it's just that nostalgia hook that, they got to keep bringing people back with what they know.
Yeah, I think...
that was an interesting point. Yeah, go ahead, Phil.
I was going to say, I was thinking about this because, certainly there's a time difference, even just making the analogy between Mighty Morphin and now. Though, interestingly, I assume the only movies, the original Mighty Morphin cast, if I can call them that, they had 2 movies or 1 movie?
They had 2 movies. The second movie was like an intro for the season after Power Rangers.
Is that the Zeo intro?
Or no, Turbo. So I
remember the Turbo movie.
Yeah, so it was the original Power Rangers movie, the Turbo movie, and then the 2017 movie, which was a reboot, which fell back on Mighty Morphin. Yeah,
that was sort of the 2009 version. Because I was just thinking that, in some ways...
Guys, Goldar is made of gold. I mean...
What a concept.
Not enough Dar.
And then Silver Dar and Bronze Dar all come together.
Not as good. No. But, so obviously, TOS, 60s, all that. And you can kind of see, without doing entire Star Trek history in 5 seconds, but, motion picture, and then you had the original series movies and all that. But, at this point, it's 2020. So it's not like... broadly speaking, anyone grew up on TOS. No, you may have by accident, but
our parents grew up on TOS at best.
Because I'm 40, okay? I mean that's okay, or I will be in October, so I'm just going to say it now, 40. And so that's 1980. I was born. So I mean, the broad audience is often going to be the whole 1835 or whatever. So no one grew up watching TOS, even if it's the reruns. Even my dad probably grew up watching reruns in college, and so it's the next generation. And I'm not saying better, but would seem to have a bigger cultural memory. You know what I'm trying to say of the Gen X millennials,
right?
But you don't see people redoing Next Gen. I mean, Picard. We could say Picard, but putting that pause for a second, there's not been
That's
this...
true. Picard is kind of going back to the Next Gen well.
But you don't see, them pumping out Next Gen.
Well, I think maybe one way to look at it is, the original series and Kirk and Spock and the 1701 Enterprise, that is such in the cultural zeitgeist, the fabric of... As soon as people think of Star Trek, it's either Spock or Kirk or the original Enterprise. I mean, for a lot of people that aren't huge fans out there, that's what they think of. They think of Kirk and Spock. And just think of all the marketing, Enterprise, when it first came out, it was 150 years before Kirk and Spock. And then what did Discovery do? 10 years before Kirk and Spock.
So Kirk and Spock is year 0 in the calendar.
But that's what it feels like.
Because it's interesting to go from Next Gen to DS9 to Voyager. I mean, I don't know if we really call it the Golden Age, but we'll call it that, the Golden Age of Trek or whatever, the 90s. Yeah. But then to be when they hit that Enterprise thing of oh, where do we go from here? And also, even what you said is true. They didn't necessarily press it until that last season, which they did press it. Hey, we the Mirror universe and blah blah, wearing the old uniforms and all that. But it did seem to be that the gap. Is Star Trek franchise dead? And I don't know. You can tell me about the Power Ranger timeline if there was ever a gap where they had to how do we do this? But when you had that sort of,
there's also some ownership changes, which
well, same thing with Star Trek to an extent. Once the Berman era ended. And
Right.
then the JJ era, for lack of a better
Paramount
word.
and
Yeah, which I mean,
CBS.
and Alex, it's basically JJ and Alex. So
What do you think, Daniel, about the overall dipping back, or as Philip said, is there a double dip? Did we have TOS dips, with the movie, but then is Picard like a dip back to next gen?
Before I answer your question, I just want to say, because this may be the only time that we directly compare them. You guys were briefly mentioning the 2009 reboot of Star Trek, and also briefly mentioned the 2017 reboot of Power Rangers. And I love both those movies. I just want to say, I think.
Me too.
Oh yeah,
great.
no, we're not dissing on it.
I know you weren't. I just wanted to say, I think they're both. Really...
Where's the crossover T-shirt, guys? We need it.
yeah. But no, I totally agree with Eric. Like, I think it's about the maximum impact that the franchise has when it hits, like when it gets big. Like Star Trek is Star Trek at first. Like Star Trek, that's what people think of, and Power Rangers was big when Mighty Morphin was on, and that's what people think of. And I think, I guess maybe the more, like, it has the maximum cultural impact at that moment, and the more time that passes, the more people want to go back to that thing. Like, even us as TNG fans don't want to see, or Deep Space Nine or Voyager. I don't think any of us want to see straight reboots of those adventures, but we don't have any problem seeing a reboot of TOS times. Like, we don't. Maybe we have
enough time has passed.
It's like,
to
yeah,
kind
exactly.
of give it a new shot.
Yeah, it's both the time that's passed, like in terms of production and how things were done and how they're different now, and in terms of the fact that you don't get those people back. You can't. I mean, some of them are still around, but only some, and much
Fewer
older.
and fewer.
It's not the same anymore. So I think we're much more amenable to new quote unquote adventures in their time. I don't know. It's just it seems to me like it's just all nostalgia based. It's completely based on people like, oh, that was really big when I was young, and there have been other things, but I don't care or know about those. I want to go back to the one thing I knew when I was, in high school or whatever. So.
Well, and like Eric, I know you have talked about, I think your favorite Power Ranger series is SPD.
Right.
And so, obviously with 20 some odd series to choose from, there's going to be some gems and some lemons, that are, but, it's interesting with Power Rangers. I've noticed how you get into the kind of completionist sense of nostalgia where we're gonna release like the Ranger keys, or the something where they're like, oh, we're gonna release something and it's got to be everything, but they kind of then you get worried that it's going to run out of steam before they make one widget of every single Ranger, because it's like hundreds at that point. That's kind of the burden that Power Rangers has to bear.
Yeah, and like at least for Star Trek, you have these distinct series and the merchandising. Obviously, you have characters, but with Power Rangers, it's like you have these different forms that are ageless, like their powers. It's like this superhero franchise, and you're right, Darren. It's like this completionist thing that we are worried about as collectors, because it happened with Bandai. Bandai did their Legacy series of figures, and
what did they start with?
Mighty Morphin. But they promised, they're like, oh yeah, we're going to do every single Ranger. Well, there's like over 150 of those now. And so, yeah, it gets a little much. And as a completionist, you're like, oh man, if they start a new figure line, are they really going to get to my favorite Ranger or my favorite whatever? And I kind of compare that to what Eagle Moss is doing with the Star Trek ships.
I was just thinking about Eagle Moss.
It's like, there's the same thing. You have this like endless supply of this one thing that is multiple variations of, where you can just keep pumping them out for all time. But like that, you're wondering, are they going to get to my favorite starship?
I don't know. They start to scrape the bottom of the barrel. It feels it's like
the Beatles anthology, Volume 6. It's just George clearing his throat.
I almost want to
pull up a list where it's like the Meladon tanker from Voyager. I'm like, why? Who the heck?
Or they're just
was
doing like
this?
alternate, like here's from the comics. I'm like, all right, you're just making stuff up now. Literally.
Yeah, I'd say Eagle Boss. They got all the good ones out, and then it's
Right.
kind of like, well, we got to keep going. It's like, well, Spock shuttle specifically from Discovery.
You know, if they
You
made it, we would buy it for
my-
you.
Oh, we would buy it. We totally would buy that. Yeah.
You know, I was going to say that if they're giving you excuses about creating all of those different figures and stuff, there are over 800 different Pokemon, and I know for a fact you can absolutely find
Find
each
them
and
all?
every single one of them. So that is an excuse, is all I'm saying.
Oh yeah.
Well, and I wonder with TOS, and this is going to sound like a backhanded thing, and I don't mean it to. Is it that it's too simple? Because look, I will argue that there's TOS. There's a lot going on. It's not just what the stereotypes are. But is it just that it's a simpler breakdown than like, okay, let's break down the Picard, or excuse me, I said Picard, Next Generation, Voyager, DS9. But like TOS, it's like it's the three, and then everyone else, and then it's like a ship that's pretty simple looking, and then they just like you beam down to a strange thing with an alien. I mean, it's which that's how you can say all of Star Trek, but it's sort of like it's the most simple thing to redo, and because TOS is older, you're not gonna be like, oh, that's not how I remember. It's like, oh no, it was old, and simply done. And again, I'm not trying to. It was the '60s. They did the best. It was great. We all love it. But I'm saying, now in the 21st century, it's like, oh, we can do that better now. We can do that better now. And so to a certain extent, the '90s Trek, which they could do better, but they're like, oh, that's pretty good. It still stands up a little bit, the screens and everything. But like, no one's using the styrofoam pad anymore like they had in the '60s or something. So is it just like, as a maker, and Darren, I know you're a maker, and of course we're all in our own ways, but sort of like, oh, I can do that design, but better. So it's sort of like the JJ inspiration of redoing the bridge, and Alex, with
That's
the
true.
Kurtzman and
You have, like,
Discovery, I can do the bridge again,
Yeah.
even better, and then
Well, and yeah, there's an interesting difference between like Discovery redoing the Enterprise, but still making it feel like the Enterprise, both inside and out.
Right.
But then you have something like Star Trek Continues, where they had a mission of, we want it to look like a direct made in the 60s continuation of the show. And I believe they succeeded in that, but that was their mandate, their mission that they wanted to do. Yeah, it's, it's like, then you get into the, well, how much do you change? Because everybody wants to put their own spin on it, but
Right.
you can't change it too much, because then it becomes like, well, that's not Kirk's ship, or that's not, already you're having pushback a little bit on, the Discovery Enterprise, where it's like, well, it doesn't look like the 60s inside. I'm like, well, I don't want it to look like the 60s inside, but, I want it to have that same feel.
But then
They have
again,
they have little
Enterprise-
robots. They have
Enterprise-
droids that zip around inside. Okay, come on, guys. Yeah.
But then again, Enterprise was able to do that. That was 2005, and they were able to recreate the bridge, and that still looked beautiful. So you can
Right.
still do it.
You can do it.
And I think to Philip's point, I know what he's trying to say. It's like, it's the most like simplest formula for what the franchise is. You have
It's
Kirk,
core.
Spock, the three, the ship. It's in terms of design, I'm not saying the designs are basic, but it's got that original formula that people just latch onto. And it's the same with Power Rangers, like specifically Mighty Morphin. They still have that core formula. The 5 teens, a mentor, the bad guys, big giant robot. There you go. And so it's easy to do a reboot movie, and eventually whenever Hasbro does their version of it, but they also do it for the comics as well. The comics started in 2016, and it's a new interpretation. They're not stuck in 93. It's the same teens, but it's modern. They've got cell phones. It's more of that modern high school take on it.
Is the
And-
Morpher an app then on their phone? And they
no,
hold
it's
it
still
out?
it's still the Morpher. So that's what I'm trying to say. It's like you can
Swipe
still
thumb up.
have the same elements, but change the setting enough to reflect modern times. And that's why I'm really excited for Strange New Worlds, because it's close enough to TOS where you're like, how are they going to approach that, especially with their messaging of that trailer, like, oh, it's going to be more positive and exploratory.
Episodic.
Yeah, and I want Star Trek to be that. I'm sick of like the overarching bad guy plot of the season or the universe ending, how's Earth going to explode this season plot. So
well, and at the end of it, you have, I mean, as fun as Picard was, at the end, the majority of it was spent telling us that the Federation is evil, and I don't want that.
No.
But guys, it's really important. Eagle Moss episode, issue number 128, the OV-165, the little ship we saw at the beginning of Enterprise that flies in the transition. I need it, guys. I mean, or 23rd century Tholian ship, 129. Oh, even better, guys. Alice, 125. The Alice ship from that one episode with Tom, where he
fell in love with the ship.
Oh, he fell in love in the ship. I need his love ship.
It's almost
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding, but not, because it's just funny when it gets to the later numbers.
And since we're just throwing every franchise on the wall here, it kind of reminds me of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles toy line, and to a certain extent Star Trek as well, where after a while they would come up with certain ones that's like, which some of these I owned, Pizza Face, or like, all these like villains, like, where did this...
You know what, actually, that's a really interesting point, Philip, because I would argue that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is a franchise that excels at reinventing itself.
Yes.
Almost every single time they do it, there's always something new or fresh.
It's some weird tie-in
and it's
as well.
Yeah, it's always something.
Oh, I meant the toys.
It's not. They're never like. We're not stuck in 1987 with the Turtles. Like there are some throwbacks occasionally. The new toy line they release that'll be from the old cartoon or whatever.
April O'Neil is a vlogger instead of working at Channel 6 News. I don't know. I'm getting it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, they've done that.
Nobody looks at the original comics or the 87 cartoon as like the Holy Grail. It's just every 5 years we get a new version of the Turtles. But it's always that
same core, the same four brothers, Splinter, and the bad guy.
Pizza.
That's what Power Rangers like. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is a great example because they've never spun it past its core. It's always been a new iteration every time. And you could say that's because they go through that kid cycle every 5 years. The kids get into it, then they age out, because it's all about toys.
Splinter taught them to be ninja teens.
Now, Eric, in all the iterations, do all the teenagers have attitudes?
They gotta have attitude. It's in the formula,
Philip. Of attitudes.
And I think I saw a funny video someone made where like Splinter's handing out the powers, and it's like, oh, you have attitude, Michelangelo, and it's like, Raphael, you are a righteous dude, and then it's like at the Donatello he like forgets about. He's like, oh yeah, you do machines, right? Yeah, here's a stick. And it's like, I mean, I love Donatello. He's one of my favorites, but it's just funny how it kind of like doesn't, in the song, it doesn't quite work.
But what I was going to say was like for Star Trek and Power Rangers, yeah, there's that core element to it, but both franchises have spun off into different teams and crews and themes even now with all the, latest Star Trek series going on. But it's always rooted into its core. And yeah, that's why I think it's ongoing because, it's still able to spark our imaginations and it's still able to reinvent itself for whatever audience.
Eric, I'm wondering, as someone who's not well versed, with Star Trek, I mean, you know this, I'm not explaining this to you, but anyway, so with Star Trek, every series, even ancillarily or even on an anniversary, will do a callback to TOS. So, with TNG, you had Scotty or Spock, and then DS9 did Trouble with the Tribbles, Voyager did Sulu and the Excelsior. With Power Rangers, do the subsequent iterations ever feel the need, or is there ever sort of like once a thing to do some sort of callback or some sort of thing?
How many series has Tommy Oliver been in, Eric?
Exactly.
I just want to know.
well, no, like the past, like for the 20th anniversary series, they did a big finale where all the past Rangers returned and some actors returned for that. For the 25th anniversary a couple years ago, they brought back a whole bunch of veteran Rangers, and they've done callbacks and mentions, sprinkled
When was
throughout.
Forever Red?
Forever Red was in Wild Force, which was the 10th anniversary for Power Rangers.
That's where a whole bunch of Red Rangers
All the Red
showed
Rangers.
up for like a giant fight, which is awesome. I mean, it's 100% fan service, but we don't even care because it's so awesome.
And even, there's even instances in Power Rangers where, they'll reference something from a past season, and unless you're an older fan, or you've at least watched all the shows, you'll get it. But the kids aren't really picking up all of that. So
they're jumping on Wikipedia so fast, Eric. They got to find out. Wait, well, who is that person in the background? Episode 3. I see the reference now.
Yeah, I think the thing with Strange New World, and I don't know, Daniel, you're always sort of our prequel critic, not always, but you always have feelings about it. But with Strange New World, I think there's some. I mean, I think obviously, with Discovery, everyone loved Anson's portrayal of Pike, and I think that thing just grew. And then, Spock. I guess you can never go wrong with Spock, right? Apparently. But anyway, all that's to say is, but I think it's an interesting position because. You're not saying it's a huge consideration, but when you have Rebecca as number 1 and Anson's Pike and Spock, you sort of have these 3 white people, and so I'd be interested to see what the rest of the crew looks like. And then, but anyway, with the prequel of how they're gonna do, like, this is the before Kirk Enterprise, and so in a lot of ways I'm usually critical, but in this instance, maybe for whatever reason I'm just more enthusiastic about like exploring stuff that we didn't see in TOS, but we know because of either Enterprise in the past or because of DS9 and blah, blah, blah in the future, stuff that should have been around in TOS, but we didn't see it because it hadn't been really invented yet, but should have been there, and so then we can explore in Strange New World. So I think that's at least an interesting part to that, at least. So that there is still theoretically unexplored parts of TOS that we've retroactively built into the history.
It almost sounds like it's too complicated to deal with, and maybe they shouldn't do it. But I understand.
The fans demanded it, Daniel.
Did the online petition finally do something? Well, to that point, Daniel, though, what do you feel about? Again, like our core premise, our redipping to the TOS well, not saying that you have to like or dislike, Strange New Worlds, but if you were to add a next show after Picard, Picard's doing well, what would you do?
And it can't be an animated show, and it can't be a Nickelodeon show, because those are done. Section 31.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's okay. I would never elect for that one anyways. So I don't know. I don't know. I think kind of as what we're dealing with here as a premise to what we've been talking about, I think can be dangerous to get stuck in the past. And we already have Discovery, but Discovery's moved on. That's how good it is. It's just moved on 1,000 years into the future. But it was initially a prequel. We've already had Enterprise, which was a prequel. A
prequel.
We've been dealing with the JJ movies, which are prequel and contemporaneous
reboot.
At the same time.
Yeah.
So,
one of my favorite things is a Screen Rant, is the pitch meetings, and when he's doing the Star Trek 2009, it's like, is it a prequel, sequel, or reboot? He's like, yes.
Yes.
And then, with the 2009, it's kind of one of the few times in a franchise you've had them directly kind of look at the camera and be like, alternate timeline, we can do what we want. Which, it was a great idea, but it's like,
I like that.
To directly call it out is a good move.
I mean, he didn't have to do that. I mean, look, as much as I'm not a fan of all the stuff in the JJ films, he didn't have to do that. He could have just said, it's Star Trek. But it did the fact that, like...
Yeah, hey, it's Kirk and Spock and McCoy. Deal with it.
But he's like, we know how you are, people. So,
Well, but bringing in Leonard Nimoy, like the way they did that, I think worked really well. And after his passing, the way they transitioned to that was still a really touching scene.
Well, Eric, is there, and again, without knowing anything, is there a series that you feel that have been, or iterations, I'll use that word, that have been hurt by being overshadowed by either too much fan service to Mighty Morphin, or, in other words, that sort of were like the lost souls because maybe they were trying to do something and Tommy showed up and they're like, oh, we don't care about anyone, we just want Tommy or something.
Well, I mean, for some, I would say some of the more quote unquote casual fans, or those who like Die Hard, grew up with it and didn't watch anything past Mighty Morphin. I'm not gatekeeping or anything like that. I mean, if you're a fan of the show, you're a fan of the show. But I mean, if it were up to, any of those guys, it would just be like Mighty Morphin all the time. Like if it's not Mighty Morphin, it sucks.
More like the Ninja Turtles, where it would just reinvent that exact story every single time.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, pretty much any series that came after Mighty Morphin is going to always be held up to the original in some respects. But, there hasn't been any show that specifically relied on Mighty Morphin unless it was Dino Thunder, which brought back the character of Tommy Oliver. But he was a main character of the show. He was a new Ranger, but it was different. He was almost like a different person. Like he was a mentor instead
moving
of
him into the mentor role.
Yeah. And so it didn't rely on the Mighty Morphin nostalgia. There was a couple episodes where they did look into the past, to kind of connect things all together.
Did they go to the red filter planet, Eric?
No.
Oh, man. I love the red filter planet. It's my favorite planet.
But hey, that happens in Power Rangers too. Like, no, it's similar. Like Star Trek and Power Rangers, they've got these similar things that happen, like huge fan bases and multi-decade at this point franchises with multiple spin-offs. And yeah, so I don't know if this answers your question, but no one series has super relied on Mighty Morphin unless it was like those first few series that continued, like they took
it's almost
some
with
of
the same cast that's continuing on, yeah.
Right.
That'd be like
that's like the
Zeo
Zordon
and
era.
Ninja.
Because technically it didn't, and again, I don't know anything, technically didn't Mighty Morphin have a entire cast change at the end or near the end? I don't know when it did.
They had 2 seasons, right, of the
Three
original.
seasons.
3 seasons.
Right.
And then was Ninja and then Zeo?
No, it was Alien Rangers. So,
Alien Rangers.
Yeah, it was crazy. So
Set the Wayback Machine to 1993, Eric.
No, so Mighty Morphin, those 3 seasons, the thing with that was they were relying on this footage from Japan, and when they ran out of the original, they're like, we gotta incorporate the other show somehow, but the suits are what people recognize. So, you get like the Zords change, and you get the White Ranger in season 2, and then they become ninjas in season 3 because, again, the footage changed for Sentai, but they used the suits that we got for the first one. So yeah, there was a couple cast changes. Like when the movie happened, 3 of the original actors left the show and they brought in 3 more. And so that's who's in the movie. So yeah.
I have a kind of a follow-up.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this, and I was going to say it's lightning in a bottle twice kind of a situation. And I can think it's happened with Star Trek and it happened with Doctor Who. But, where franchises that died for a while came back like in a significant, like crazy way. Like TNG was a huge success in its own right. And I'm wondering, is maybe the problem here, and especially in terms of Power Rangers, that there was no second coming of Power Rangers? Maybe because whether there was no gap or whether nothing ever hit as hard. But it's hard for franchises.
Yeah,
to
touch on that, Eric, and also with the transition of ownership, because I think that is more of what kind of happened to that franchise.
Yeah, so Power Rangers was in the hands of Saban Entertainment until Disney bought the franchise after the 10th season. So that anniversary season, Disney bought the franchise, or Haim Saban sold it to Disney for a lot of money. Because that's what he does. And then the production moved to New Zealand, where it's been ever since. Disney had it for a number of years, and then I think it was like 8 years that they had the franchise. The last season that they produced in the Disney era was, they were like, look, we're pretty much done with Power Rangers, so do whatever you want. And that season, RPM, is arguably one of the best like Power Ranger seasons in terms of story, the darkness, the comedy, like everything just hit on a more mature level because Disney didn't care. And so when the show was canceled, all the fandom was like, oh my God. So the last
it's just getting good.
Yeah, the last year of their contract, Disney actually went back to Mighty Morphin and did a revisioning, which was basically they made original Power Rangers episodes like pop-up video. They drew new graphics on top of it. It's horrible. It's called like MMPR 2010. It's the worst. But then
and it's reimagineering is what they call it.
Yeah. So then Haim Saban bought back the franchise because I don't think anyone else wanted it, to be frank. And they did with Saban Brands, and they relaunched Power Rangers literally the next year, 2011, with Power Rangers Samurai. And that became what fans call the Neo Saban era. And
that's where like every 2 years, it's like they don't change the cast as often, but they still you have like what you said,
new uniform,
Super Sentai, the Japanese version. Yeah.
Right. Sorry, I meant you said Samurai. It was or not, and then you had Super Samurai. So it's like you had the regular and then the Super the following year.
But when Saban bought it back and did Samurai, like they really rushed to get Samurai out. That's why a lot of the scripts are basically, they credit the original shows from Japan because they were translating a lot of the scripts. So the story beats were not the best, but it was such a hit with its core audience, which is kids. And there was such a huge resurgence in people buying the toys. Power Rangers is a big toy commercial. That's all it is.
I'm shocked, Eric. This is news to me.
Yeah. But the success of Samurai for the target audience, I think when it came back, there was something crazy like, 11 million viewers an episode. Now it's, under 500,000, but that's a whole nother discussion of like TV and cable ratings and all that stuff. But if it wasn't for the success of Samurai for its core audience, Power Rangers wouldn't have gone on another 10 years. And then Saban sold it after the failure of the 2017 movie at the box office. He sold it to Hasbro. And now Hasbro is making a new season to come out next year, and it's based on dinosaurs going back to its roots. So big surprise.
Well, and Philip, if you can, give us the short summary version for Doctor Who.
Sure.
Because again, that's a similar. I always think of that line from Princess Bride. It's like, let me explain. No, there's too much. Let me sum up.
Well, it premiered in '63. The reason I can always remember it was JFK's assassination day. So it premiered in '63, November 22nd, 1963. And so it went on for a long time. It was in the '80s that sort of the death nails were starting because they fired one of the doctors. Colin Baker, the sixth Doctor, literally got fired. Nothing he did other than we want a different direction. You're not doing what we it's not, program's not going where we wanted. But then the president of the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation, just didn't like Doctor Who. Sort of like Les Moonves didn't like Star Trek. He didn't like Doctor Who, and so he was like, and then this was. Especially with the American influences, Star Wars and all the TV series, Star Trek and Next Generation at that point, all these things were coming out. And Doctor Who, as far as technology had gone, wasn't looking like it was keeping up. And so they were just started cutting it off a little bit at the knees, as networks will do. BBC was no different. And so more or less it got, because like in the Sixth Doctor era, they took it off the air for about a year and a half. And it was like, and then the fans were like, it's coming back, right? And so it came back with the Sixth Doctor in sort of a, almost a mini series. That season was almost a mini, because it's the Trial of the Time Lord. And off the top of my head, I want to say it's 4 stories. But anyway. And so then you had the Seventh Doctor with Sylvester McCoy and Ace, which I think is actually really... I'm not a fan of Sixth Doctor. That's just me. But so I was like, But the Seventh Doctor and Ace, I think you had some resurgent storylines and whatever. But anyway, long story short, it gets canceled in 89. And then... And it doesn't even get canceled. It just doesn't get renewed.
And
like, you know...
There's just no news.
I mean...
When was the movie,
So the TV
was...
movie was BBC and 20th Century Fox, and that was 96 off the top of my head. So that was all, They were hoping that some American influence would help. It did not do well in America, the United States. It actually did very well in Britain, but they were looking for money from the U.S. because it was a joint venture with Fox. So it still died, and it wasn't until, they had an anniversary coming up. 40th? That might not be right. But anyway, I'll say it's the 40th. And no anniversary plans.
It would have been 2003?
Yeah, and nothing was planned for it. The BBC was not going to do anything because, there were still, you had Big Finish, the audio was producing audio adventures of Doctor Who. Novels were big, everything they can ever... It's like Star Wars, I assume. But anyway, all that came back, and then finally it came back with Russell T Davies taking the helm in 2005 with the Ninth Doctor, and it's going ever since.
With the New Who.
Yeah, and so that's, New Who, Classic Who, that's usually what I call it. People can call it what they want. But anyway, and then it's obviously been going well ever since. So I think it was just in the latter part of Classic Who, and I won't defend every story, but the looks started to get a little stereotypical, stories started to get a little stereotypical, and Doctor Who to a certain extent is stereotypical. It's usually there's like 3 different stories, I think, but anyways, but that just was not keeping up to the times. And then, there can be an argument because Russell T Davies was a writer, and I'll shut up here, was a writer who had done a lot of domestic stories, for lack of a better word, like, dramas, basically. And so Doctor Who, even though you had Ninth Doctor with Chris Eccleston and Rose, you still had that Rose was from, what they would call like a blue-collar place in London. And you showed her family and showed the apartment complex where she lived. And it was sort of like, it was still time and space, but when you were at home, you sort of got that familial thing with her boyfriend.
Yeah, identification.
Yeah, and so it was still kind of keeping that drama, even though it's, kind of a kid's series, but, it's always been under BBC drama, not under BBC children's programming. So it's still drama. And so that's basically where it went from there. It's just bringing in that more modern storytelling is how it kind of was pitched and got renewed. So.
Well, and then you have Star Wars, where you have not even... I wouldn't even say Star Wars would have like a dark age or a dip. It would just have surges. So you would have like the trilogy, the original trilogy from 77 to 83. Then you'd have the prequels from 99, onward. And then you have the sequel trilogy. But in between that, Star Wars is also interesting, as we were talking about Star Trek and the different times, where there's lots of gaps because of that trilogy effect. So you have the huge gap of like, after Revenge of the Sith, the Empire is brand new, and then you have like a 20-year gap before A New Hope starts, and a lot of stuff has been placed in there. I mean, a whole show has been dedicated to the span between episode 2 and 3 with the Clone Wars, and we get hundreds of hours of episodes there. Plus, there's stuff that's happening after the Jedi, which is like The Mandalorian. That's set in that, kind of just post-Empire fall. And yeah, it's just... But again, there's still that reverence for the original trilogy, for Luke, Leia, and Han, for the Millennium Falcon, for things like that for Jedi and Sith and light side and dark side, and those are the core elements that you have throughout.
Yeah, it's I guess it's interesting, and this is for all these franchises that we're talking about, is the belief in, and this is maybe from an executive standpoint, which is a whole other perspective, but that's how it gets made. Is it the characters or is it the world? And I mean, there's no right answer, I suppose, but, so why do they keep doing TOS? Because they think it's the characters. oh, it's Kirk Spock. They want
Right.
the
What
Enterprise.
makes it a Star Trek show / movie?
But-
Is it the characters or is it the location?
Because and again,
and the
Star Wars
world?
is not my franchise, so I know a little more than Power Rangers, but not as much. But like Mandalorian, which I haven't watched, but there's very little, if any, Holy Trilogy references. I mean, there's no, and it's not like the movies, where you had to have everyone still show up. I haven't even seen the last Star Wars movie either. But anyway, but it's like Star Trek. The Enterprise is usually there. And then DS9 was the experiment, and then Voyager was even more of an experiment. But then, it's kind of like TOS, but it's in the Delta Quadrant. And then Enterprise was literally called Enterprise. And then you went back to TOS, so that always had to have something that the kid, and it's a very executive. What sells? What do they know? What can they recognize? What's the hook? And so I don't know with Power Rangers. Like you said, it's always going to be what it is, but it's
the team.
Yeah, well, it's
the formula,
the look, the Zords, or whatever they're called, and everything.
Yeah, I'd say Power Rangers is like the formula.
Right.
Star Wars is, or Star Trek is kind of the type of story, in a way. Like I think story is not always, but highest. But it's kind of, I'd say whether you set it on a space station or a starship or whatever, like the types of stories you get is definitely a defining factor in a Star Trek show or movie. And then Star Wars is, I'd say mostly the world. Mm-hmm. Again, like you said, like the Mandalorian, there's no Jedi in the Mandalorian. There's no Jedi in Rogue One, but that feels you're in that world. You're during that story.
So that's an interesting point. I think I would argue that Star Wars is all about character. I think The Mandalorian, to me, feels like an outlier, only in the fact that it seems to have struck lightning outside of those characters, those main core characters. Mm-hmm. But all of the new trilogy is basically trying to rehash those old characters, bring them back.
True.
And none of the new stuff seems to be sticking very well. So it's Star Wars.
No, I'm not disagreeing. I guess I was thinking of those outliers specifically because it's a commonality amongst all of the shows and so regardless of whether it's a droid cartoon or a sequel film or something like that, even if you don't have Luke and Leia and Han in it, like the prequels, it's still that world. That's the underlying commonality. But I do, it's like a 1-2, like they're really close. Because like you said, we don't want to live in the Star Wars universe because it has spaceships. We want to live in it because we want to be Jedi and Stormtroopers and, those characters that resonated with us.
And like with Power Rangers, technically there's this 27-year continuity, which they play kind of fast and loose sometimes.
Why is Angel Grove always being attacked by monsters and not City whatever over the hill?
But you could say that yes, there is that continuity, and that world, especially when it comes to team ups and all that stuff. But for Power Rangers, like you were saying, Darren, to your point, it's the formula: bad guys, monsters, big giant robot. At its base element, there you go. And yeah, Star Wars, the characters, the amazing universe that they've been able to create. Star Trek, it's those types of stories. It's the crew,
the
it's
social
the
commentary that's a hair's breadth off of true just because it's sci-fi, but we all know what they're talking about. Those are the best ones.
Yeah, it's masking social commentary with this sci-fi show and about exploration and our future. So yeah, I think all of those franchises that we've talked about, those are all elements that have sustained them for all of these years. Yeah, they just approach it in different ways.
And I'd be curious, Eric, if you think, and you may have mentioned them, whether any of the iterations is like the black sheep, and not necessarily in a negative way, but in like the most unlike the others. Well, go ahead.
Yeah, and that's the series I referenced earlier, Power Rangers RPM. It was so polarizing for a lot of fans because it did break far enough away from that mold, or it poked fun at itself more, that it really was you either love it or hate it series for a lot of fans. And like on my podcast, I love it. My co-host Zach loves it. My co-host AP hates that series. She's like, too much of a departure from Power Rangers. So yeah, there are a couple series like that where it's so polarizing for fans. You know, don't even bring it up in conversation because you'll hear like a 30-minute, rant about it.
It's like bringing up Minerva to Abed about Dr. Space-Time. But anyway, I was trying to think in the Kurtzman era, if I can call it that, the modern day TV era, because that's the executive producer for all
the All Access era.
Yeah.
We have to call it that.
Yeah. Because look, and this is, I'm not making a value on anything. Looking at Discovery and Picard, which is what there is, and then what we know, presumably, even the short treks, if you want to look at those, and then Strange New Worlds, of course, but then even looking at the Lower Decks, and then
Untitled Nickelodeon show,
and Section 31,
and Section 31.
Is this the most? Well, I'm obviously going to answer my question the way I'm phrasing. Isn't this like the most experimental age about how Discovery is done? And then there's that, and then you have Picard, and that's whether you want to say that's similar or different from Discovery, and then it's like, okay, we want to do something even different, and it's almost like different is looking backwards to, and because it's like, and then maybe the emphasis is on Twitter where it's like, this is going to be episodic, guys. Okay, we know some of you all are, and I'm like, and I'm one of those guys. I'll admit it. But each to their own. But it's kind of like where they're going for the variety, and the way to get variety is by like what came vintage, if you want to use that word.
I would argue that Discovery and Picard are more similar than TNG and Deep Space Nine are, and I would argue that that it's a bigger risk. Deep Space Nine was a much bigger risk coming off of TNG than Picard is off of Discovery. So I think it's way too early to say it's the most experimental phase that we're going to enter. If Lower Decks and Nickelodeon show and all this stuff we're seeing, if what they're actually saying about Strange New Worlds is true, then maybe you could say that. But I think it's way too early to tell, and I think that what we've seen so far has been cause for concern for a sort of template to sort of view the Star Trek lens, and I think that we'll have to see.
Eric, no Power Rangers run concurrently, right? It's always one series.
Yeah, for the most part, early on, like I said, it was, those 3 seasons, and then you had the Zordon era where cast changed a little bit, but some of the people ran through multiple seasons. Currently, yeah, they break the show up into like 2 seasons now with, ever since it's been aired on Nickelodeon. So, yeah, but otherwise, the theme changes every year or every 2 years.
Because in a sense, and maybe this is me projecting and I'm totally wrong, I almost feel like the Kurtzman era, and this is not a critique, I'm just saying this would feel like to me, is that here's different Star Treks, y'all just choose one. Or, you'll find something. Yeah. It's like a buffet.
It feels kind of thrown at the wall, like what's going to stick. Yeah, well, and I think that's kind of what Daniel was saying, is it's like, they maybe aren't all actually different. It's just it's from the same cup thrown at the wall, and there's 5 globs that stick, and they're different. But are they? Well, and we just don't know yet.
I almost feel like, and I don't mean this because it's like I'm saying this like a conspiracy, and I don't mean that. But it's almost like a dividing the fandom of like, okay, well, you're a Discovery fan, and you're a Strange New World, but it's like I can't we all just be Star Trek? But again, that's me just probably being an old man or something. But it just seems like
it's real.
Yeah, I think it's just like you're always going to have fans that glob onto one version over the other. But yeah, at the end of the day, like with Star Trek and Power Rangers, it's all that shared universe. Like at the end of the day, we all like the same type of thing.
Who was the last Mighty Morphin cast member to remain, other than Tommy?
Oh God, actually, the guy who played Bulk, Paul Schreier, like
yeah,
he lasted, aside from the most episode
that's
appearance
true.
besides Tommy Oliver, Jason David Frank, Bulk lasted until like season 8 of the show.
Wow.
Like Lost Galaxy
He's
was
the
the
Worf.
last one that he
He's the
was in.
Worf.
Wait a minute,
Power
what
Rangers.
happened? This is probably far too deep for you to go into, but what happened to Skull, man? Like you just
Okay, it's actually funny because
They have like a huge arc, don't they? Like,
Oh, yeah.
it's 8 years. Yeah.
no, they have a huge arc. It was funny because Samurai, what we were talking about, Bulk comes back with his nephew Spike, which turns out to be Skull's son, and Skull shows up in the last episode of Samurai. They reunite, but Bulk was throughout, so they brought him back. But it was funny.
Wait, so if it's his nephew, that would mean that Skull is his brother, like
but no, like he calls him Uncle Bulk. But
Oh, okay,
they're
got it.
essentially
Okay.
best
Air quote
friends
uncle.
because they're
Okay,
brothers.
got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, it was funny because the last season that Bulk was on, Lost Galaxy, they made a joke in the first episode that like Bulk and the professor friend that was from the last season, they took off and they forgot Skull. And so the last shot of Skull you see before Samurai, it's him like, sleeping in bed and the alarm's going off and he's just like,
You just missed the bus.
But yeah, I mean, that's like a whole cast thing, but yeah. Anywho.
That's funny. Well, yeah. Well, it's interesting. This was really fun. Just kind of diving into a ton of different franchises that are at a variety of different lengths, have different formulas, different way that they treat nostalgia. It feels like nostalgia has always been a cornerstone of anything that's repeating. It's just a little more apparent nowadays, I think, or maybe we're just older and we can see it for what it is now. But yeah, it's going to be interesting as Star Trek and Star Wars and everything that's continuing on nowadays. How much are they going to go back to that well, or what threads are they going to keep connected? I mean, because that's been a big thing with Star Trek, is that it's one universe, movies aside, but one universe where, you could have characters that know each other or that reference common events, and we like that stuff where
or surprise
you get
sibling or something,
name drops. Surprise sisters of Spock, and it's totally there. Or you could have Star Trek Picard, the 10-episode pilot for season 2 of Star Trek Picard.
Or just Star Trek Discovery, which was the 40-season pilot for Star Trek Strange New Worlds.
The most expensive backdoor pilot, is that what I've heard people call it for Strange New Worlds? All right. Well, Eric, thank you for joining us. This was a lot of fun. Your knowledge was really cool to dive into. Where can people listen to you and find you online?
Sure. So you can pretty much find me on Twitter and Instagram at TrekkieB47. I host the Ranger Command Power Hour on the Four Eyed Radio Network, which is a Power Rangers podcast. The other podcast I co-host on Four Eyed Radio Network is the Starfleet Escape Podcast. And then I've got a new podcast coming out on my own with my wife, both of us co-hosting, called Mixed Berries. So that's coming out. It's going to be like a general nerd type podcast.
Spouse is doing podcast. I'm against it.
You already got a great name right there.
Yeah,
that's a wonderful name.
Thank you. So that's coming soon. So
awesome. And Philip, if someone wanted to talk to you about your secret pitch for the pilot sweaters that they're going to be wearing in Strange New Worlds, where would they find you?
Well, Darren, my Twitter is at NC Public Servant.
And Daniel, if someone wanted to talk to you about the executive who kicked himself for already naming a show Enterprise, where would they find you?
Would be Rick Berman, I believe, and you can find him on Twitter at Rick Berman. I don't know his Twitter handle, but you can yell at him. I totally condone that. But you can find me on Twitter at OneUpDan. That's the number 1, not the word.
And if someone wanted to talk to me about Star Trek, Star Wars, Battlestar, or other things with star in it, they can find me on Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, or TikTok under username Dr. Sci-Fi, DrSciFi. Well, I'm Darren Moser.
I'm Daniel Prue.
I'm Philip Gilfus.
And I'm Eric Berry.
And it's Morphin time.
It's Morphin time. Yeah.
Stranded here on City Alpha 3.
Go, City.